Dear colleagues, dear journalists, welcome. We are starting our next briefing, and this is about the general update on OSCE SMM activity and the security situation in Ukraine. Alexander Hook, Deputy Chief Monitor of the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission, will be speaking, and if you need the device for simultaneous translation, you can get it at the back of the audience.
Well, good afternoon, dear friends. The OSCE Special Monitoring Mission to Ukraine continued to monitor and report on the security situation across the country since I last spoke to you. Let me now update you on the most recent and latest developments. Yesterday morning, the Chief Monitor, Ambassador Apakan, and myself returned from the 7th round of negotiations of the Security Working Group within the format of the Trilateral Contact Group in Minsk. There we discussed with the sides the plan for the withdrawal of tanks and smaller caliber weapons for over 2 days. Unfortunately, the sides did not reach an agreement. The OSCE Special Monitoring Mission continues to call upon the sides to engage in a genuine dialogue. In the meantime, on the ground, the SMM has continued to observe ceasefire violations, including by tanks and smaller caliber weapons. As usual, areas in and around the Donetsk airport remained highly volatile, with the SMM observing nearly 500 explosions there over the previous weeks. I'm happy to report, however, that Shirokine remained largely calm, especially so given the injury of one of my monitors there the previous week. We noted a limited number of civilians, including the mayor of Shirokine, in the village this week. In order to allow more residents to return and to enable our monitors to safely monitoring there, this week the SMM facilitated the visit of a SMM demining consultant to the village. Not far from Shirokine, in an area east of Oktyabr, we had, however, an incident this week which demonstrated the danger the SMM monitors face in their daily work. A so-called DPR member, in an aggressive and threatening manner, pointed his 12.7mm heavy machine gun at the SMM monitors. That he seemed to be under the influence of drugs or alcohol did not help the matters. The monitors of that patrol left that area unharmed. There was an intensification in fighting in other areas, especially in and around Khorlivka. Our monitors had on numerous occasions this week the unfortunate task of monitoring the aftermath of shelling incidents there and elsewhere. Typical of what we saw was the scene in the Perevalskaya street in Khorlivka on 30th of July, where the roof of a residential house has sustained a direct hit the previous night. Residents of the area told us that a woman had been killed and her son and husband injured in the incident. On the same day, we had monitors in Chernivtsi, north of Donetsk, where they saw 5 houses that had sustained direct mortar or artillery strikes. At the city hospital there, we were told that 2 civilians and 1 Ukrainian soldier had been killed. In Stanitsa Luhanska, our monitors observed 9 damaged houses, 3 completely destroyed. The Ukraine Armed Forces checkpoint commander there told us that 2 of his soldiers had been killed there on 2nd of August. We did in fact receive other reports that numerous Ukrainian Armed Forces soldiers had been killed this week, a fact which we of course deplore. It must be stressed, however, as in previous weeks, that the most of the violence we witnessed occurred in residential areas. Most of the victims were civilians. So long as both sides continue to maintain firing positions in residential area, this is set to continue. Apart from death and injury, the effects of the violence on ordinary people were evident in the village of Optine, just northwest of Donetsk. Residents told us that only 70 people remain in that village, the majority of them living permanently in basements because of near constant shelling. They added they had limited food and could only access water from a well at the outskirts of their village. Like with many other utilities, water supply has been hugely affected by shelling. The SMM has been involved in facilitating repair work to infrastructure with mixed results, depending on the will on the 2 sides on the ground. In Spartak, for instance, a localized ceasefire the mission facilitator held, allowing workers there to repair the damaged infrastructure. The SMM facilitated repair work on water infrastructure between Khorlivka and Mayorsk, however, was suspended because of fighting in the area. Dear friends, there is a famous saying which says, nobody wins until everybody wins. From Chernihiv in the north to Kherson in the south, from Luhansk in the east to Uzhhorod in the west, the SMM continues to daily witness the fact that Ukrainian civilians continue to be the victims of this conflict. Some have lost livelihoods, lost lives, lost loved ones. Others have lost their homes, their health, and even hope. Whether they are sheltering now in Kiev with friends or families, or taking refuge abroad, whatever they have lost, the SMM has and will not lose sight of them. Indeed, we listen very carefully, and there is no talk of winning. For in Ukraine, nobody wins until everybody wins. On that remark, I conclude my briefing with the current mission numbers. As of this week, the SMM has a total of 819 mission members. Of those are 513 monitors, 66 other international staff, and 240 Ukrainian staff. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Alexander. Чи є запитання або уточнення?
Are there any questions or clarifications? Please introduce yourself. This will be in Ukrainian. Ukrinform Agency. Чекайте. 111. Can you hear? 111. 111. Can you hear? In the report on the 3rd of August, you reported that in Stanitsa Lugansky, they were shelling from some unknown weaponry. Did you do any detailed examination or investigation, can you say that they were using some chemical ammunition or some weapons which are prohibited by international conventions?
Від 3 серпня
That was the report from the 3rd of August. And it was mentioned that this incident happened at night on the 2nd of August. And the report mentioned that there were 4 canisters discovered, which could be just parts of artillery shellings.
Yes, indeed, I can confirm that this sighting was indeed observed by our monitors as we have reported this publicly. We have not yet been able to identify the exact type of weapon used. Should we find out what weapon has been used, we will report about it publicly. But as with any other reports, we put to the public what our observers see directly on the ground. We have registered what we have seen and we continue the follow-up to this incident. And as said, if there is an update to be made, the mission will make this public.
Дякую. Чи є ще запитання?
Thank you. Any other questions? News from Donbass, Violeta Tarasenko. Could you please explain from the point of view of OSCE what will be demilitarization look like and what is now happening in your office in Donetsk? There is information that something is happening there near the office in Donetsk. How are your people working there right now?
If you refer to the withdrawal plan of tanks and smaller caliber weapons, did I understand correct? This is what you are interested in?
It was about explaining what demilitarization is. Could you explain a bit more what that means?
All right. Demilitarization is a term we don't use ourselves. What is important is that the sides disengage from each other. The sides have already agreed that they will pull back heavy weapons away from each other, away from the contact line, so they cannot engage any longer with each other. And the sides are now discussing in Minsk also to withdraw tanks and smaller caliber weapons away from the contact line. However, that doesn't mean that the actual armed forces will withdraw. You will still have infantry and smaller caliber weapons in and around the contact line. So it's not a demilitarization as everyone refers to, it's a disengagement, and that's the proper term to refer to. Now, with regard to what's happening in Donetsk at the moment, I can confirm there was a protest in front of our residence at the hotel in Donetsk this morning, early this morning, which lasted for 1.5 hours and ended at around 9 o'clock. We're up to 350 individuals protested against the war and also claimed that the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission is unable to stop the conflict with its mandate. The protest ended peacefully, unlike the last time when these similar protests were organized in Donetsk.
Дякую. Чи є ще запитання? Так, прошу.
Any other questions?
If you could please just take a moment and clarify exactly the statement you said before when you said nobody wins until everybody wins. Just expand upon that a little more. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. What we have seen now over the past 15 months is a conflict that continues to rage, a conflict that seems to have no end in sight, really, despite the fact that there were declarations to that end made in September and again this year in February. Now, what is important here is not that one side wins or one idea wins, but that Ukraine wins in the end. And that is only possible if the Ukrainians in the east, in the area not controlled by the government, and the Ukrainians on the area where the government has control, win And that is only possible if the two sides come together and find a solution, because only then the problem can be solved. And that is when everybody wins. Ukraine wins in the end.
Дякую. Ще запитання? Якщо більше немає запитань.
Once there are no more questions, then thank you, Mr. Hook, and we're looking forward to see you next week. This is our last briefing for today. There will be the agenda on our website till the end of the